Hi everyone, January the 18th, the day after the January 17th, I said I would post after doing some meditative work on Rennes-le-Château. Not much came of those, but some other things came up in the course of yesterday, and I'm going to share those with you today, which is the movie Free Guy, the movie Midnight in Paris, and a couple of little things about some 10 questions I'm going to ask you for. I have a different background because I've chosen today to sit in front of my wood stove while I do this. I've been shoveling snow for like 3 straight days again. And so now I can sit here with no hat on, no scarf on, and it's very nice and toasty warm right in front of my wood stove. As long as I sit here, it's warm. As soon as I move out of this area, it doesn't get so warm. So, yeah. Okay, so my journeys didn't go all that great yesterday. I thought I would get some sort of really useful insight, but I didn't. And that's okay. Maybe somebody else did or just wasn't right. But what happened is Sunday night I watched the movie Free Guy. And so I looked into it yesterday because there were things when I was watching the movie Free Guy that I thought, am I the only one that sees this? And I looked into some things on the internet, watched some reviews. Most of them are real. Movie reviews on the internet are actually really weird. They're like guys like working in a carnival trying to get you in to, bash the things coming up. Or, I mean, it was like being in a carnival listening to these people. But there's a couple of good ones that are done. Anyway, my insights didn't seem to be there, so I thought I'd share them with you today. I also watched the movie Midnight in Paris last night, so connected to the France thing, and I'll share that with you. And then, like I say, I've got the 10 questions. So, Howdy McCoskey Talks, January 18. Here we go. The first thing I got right away about the movie Free Guy, which a few people had asked me to review, it has a couple of course, useful questions for all of us to ask about our own non-player character, potential robotic lives, and the lives of the people around us, how many people are people and how many people are not. But what I'd seen was that the creators of this movie, the writer specifically and the creators, what they did is they've taken a whole lot of other truth-seeking movies that talk about reality, and have placed them all together. So the movie, while being rather average, not something I'd recommend anybody go watch necessarily, for me it was a really interesting endeavor of how somebody tried to take references to all of these other movies. I mean, they're quite clear. The Truman Show and They Live are the most obvious. But once you start going through, there's references to Donnie Darko, to the 13th Floor, to The Matrix, to Dark City, to Groundhog Day, and probably more that I haven't watched the thing 4 or 5 times, which you would have to do to really catch everything. And I thought that was the really interesting part of it, that it's almost like they're trying to trigger the memories of these other movies while you're watching their movie. So I'll get into a few of those as we go along. So the first issue we're looking at in the movie is we have the people with the sunglasses, the people who are wearing sunglasses in the movie. So it's a little flip side to how They Live worked. But the people with the sunglasses are these called players, and he refers to them at the start of the movie as heroes. They're the heroes of our world. They're the ones who actually see and know what's going on and respond and in this case are responding in ways that are, extremely psychotic, narcissistic, destructive, only for their own enjoyment, which pretty much explains our world and the influencers. I still like to use that word, the influencers who are in charge. The influencers, those who are at the top of anything, are the sunglasses people in this movie, right? And what's really odd, because I watched a couple of, again, I'm going to leave the reviews below. There was one review that came from a woman whose channel was suggested to me in another email. She's way too overly optimistic about everything. The link is below, but she has some really good stuff. I'll get to it. Another was a one I found on YouTube, which was from a German guy and a very philosophical presentation of its own. He left the movie theater really questioning, am I a non-player character? And sort of, obviously, he has quite a philosophy background. He takes you through Heidegger and Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre and what they said and how it relates to the movie. So those links are below. You can go check them out if you want. But the woman has some things that I don't really agree with, but she's caught a lot of other interesting pieces. One interesting piece right at the beginning is the car that the guy jumps into right at the beginning of the movie, the player guy jumps into, has the license plate Revenge on the back of it, and instead of E's is 2 3s, so you have 33. She's trying to make this claim that it's some sort of wonderful Christ consciousness, and all of these psychotic elite minions are here to create chaos for all of us non-player characters, so that we can wake up, so that the psychos are doing God's work. That's how she tries to put it, and I'm going to disagree with that immensely. What it's revealing, of course, first of all, we've got the word revenge, and so is the revenge sort of meant to be us against them? We're getting revenge for how we've been treated for tens of thousands of years, or do they see something about the human world that they themselves need revenge for? And again, it made me really curious about I had a theory a long time ago that the dinosaurs never went extinct, that the dinosaurs, due to some sort of weird thing on the earth, when humans were here at the same time, the dinosaurs and humans are living at the same time. The dinosaurs are not as far back in the past as we want to imagine. And something happened, and the dinosaurs weren't killed off. In some way, as they were dying, before they died off, they moved themselves into another realm. They moved themselves into a different reality. And whatever war that was, some type of war almost, that was going on between dinosaurs and early prototype humans hasn't ended. So there's some sort of, that the reason they act towards us in the way that they do is linked to some sort of giant history that we have no idea about, and that bizarrely, from their mental perspective, could actually make sense if you could see it. So I'm just throwing that out there because the license plate, I'll put it up here, I found the screenshot of it. License plate very clearly says revenge, and of course the double threes represent, the 33, as we know what the secret society that represents. And I think that's what it's telling you. It's describing who the players are, these so-called heroes of the game, who they really are. And of course, they don't treat this world as having any rules, laws, expectations that apply to them. They feel they can do whatever they want, as they do to the non-player characters. Now let's flip this around. We have the player character guy, and now what you've got to watch very carefully, I'm going to take you into some of these movies, what you want to watch very, very carefully is he wakes up in the bed, and he's going to be waking up in his bed constantly. This is Groundhog Day. We're seeing, first of all, the waking up in bed and the experience of that. That's Groundhog Day. We're seeing so many Truman Show references. And I don't have to go through all of them, from how he looks in the fishbowl, the first thing we see him, that's just Truman looking in the mirror. He has a similar catchphrase to like Truman, right? His catchphrase was, don't have a good day, have a great day, right? Well, Truman's was what good afternoon, good evening, and good night. So it's that he's got this little goofy catchphrase. He's got the repetitive, seemingly okay job that he does day after day after day. And so we're seeing the Groundhog Day, the repetitive nature of the life of the characters, that everything is repetitive, everything is the same. And to show you that this is the Truman Show, I'm going to take you as we go along to show multiple times, but there's a deleted scene that if you go look for Free Guy deleted scenes on YouTube, there is him and his security guard buddy, named Buddy, sitting on the beach, staring out, and Guy is talking about, is there more to life? There must be more out there. What's at the end of, what's on the other side of the sea? And if you've seen the Truman Show, of course, that's the exact same scene he's having with his buddy there. His buddy was named Marlon, I think. They're having that exact same scene on the beach where or the end of the pier. They're hitting the golf balls into the water. I mean, it's literally the same scene. all except the words are slightly different, but it's the same scene. And you'll catch it again where he has the big experience on the beach of trying to break through the wall, which happens in Truman Show with Sylvia. There's lots of this stuff you're seeing. First of all, the Truman Show, the beach, of course. Also, that's the beach in Dark City, which is the end of the Dark City world, right? You can't go past the beach. Well, that's the same thing we're dealing with here. So when you're seeing the beach, you're also seeing the movie Dark City. So keep that in mind. Again, I'd like to see Dark City. I haven't seen Dark City in a long time, and I'd like to see that again now and compare it to how many other things in Free Guy. Just because Dark City's been 15 or 20 years since I've seen it, how many things would I have caught in Free Guy that's actually coming right from Dark City? We have to notice that the characters, again, are so robotic that they live in a record groove, right? They live in a record groove. So when he has had the experience of meeting Millie and sort of has this awakening trigger fired off in him from it, and he goes in and asks for a cappuccino, this throws not just the world of the coffee barista off her nut, how can no one orders a cappuccino? That's not allowed, kind of thing. You could see the characters around him get violent, crazy. The cop is threatening to kill him. And if you look outside, there's a tank that's driven up outside, and the gun turret, the cannon turret, is turned to point directly at him. Like the whole world is going to stop any non-player character from going outside of their prescribed roles. And somebody sent me an email a while back asking me, how can you tell who is a non-player character? And again, I guess that would be the easiest way, is act with people you're not sure of, not in a normal way. Act in a completely different way with them. If you're always around somebody and you always, drink a green tea, order like an orange juice or something. If you always wear certain kind of clothes, wear completely different clothes and see how they react. If the changes doesn't really bother them too much, highly likely maybe they're human. If they're bothered by your change, if right away the change is a problem to their functioning, then you might be dealing with a non-player character, right? He works in the bank. Now you might notice the way that's set up and the way it's shot from some of the early angles is very similar to the 13th floor. The character, when he goes into the 1937 Los Angeles world, he's a banker, right? We first see him behind the screen with the bank in the bank, right? And that's and I think he does the same thing. I think the guy was stamping a check receipt or something in the 13th floor. That's what Guy does, right? I'm not going into a massive amount of the movie. I just want to show you a bit of what's in here. Like the movie They Live, they need the sunglasses to see, and the entire scene. There's a scene later where Guy and the security guard are having this discussion where he's trying to get him to put on the sunglasses, and the guy. It's of course very simply done compared to the big fight he has with Frank in They Live, where of course it turns into a battle to show how hard it is to force somebody to see the reality you don't want to look at. But there is this interaction to which the security guard refuses. He's too afraid to put the sunglasses on. But that's the movie They Live, right? Completely played out. How about when the two computer controllers, or creators of the game, when they decide to come in and try to stop Guy from acting differently in the game? One is dressed as a cop with the weird mustache, and I think that's the strange mustache from the character in the 13th floor. The other one's in a white bunny suit. And the white bunny suit does not in any way represent Alice in Wonderland or any of this kind of stuff. If you just follow him, he'll tell you. It's Frank from the 13th. They're referencing Frank from Donnie Darko, right? So you've got the mustache, which is very important on the character. He doesn't need the mustache, but he's put the mustache on when he goes into the world. The mustache is an important clue. And you're with Frank from Donnie Darko, constantly telling him to take off his skin, which is again a Donnie Darko reference, right? In the movie theater, Frank is asking him, why do you wear that stupid human suit? The human suit being the skin. Why, so he's telling him, take off the skin. In a sense, of course, he's trying to be, that's not the tone he's giving you the same message openly, but that's the reference that's trying to be made with that scene in the movie. They're trying to take you back to that scene in Donnie Darko. So I see this happening a lot, that these little references from these other movies are constantly placed in there, which I think are meant to trigger you, if you've seen that movie, and you to remember that particular scene that's kind of being mimicked. And you pull that back, and it tries to. So I think the movie itself, it's almost like a commercial, is the best way to describe it. The commercial isn't trying to entertain you, right? A television ad is not trying to entertain you. The television ad is trying to get you to associate their product with a particular emotion, so that when you are in a store or you need something, you trigger this emotion and you buy this product. The ad doesn't need to, the ad can suck, but if the ad forces you to buy their product, has implanted in your mind, it's done its job. And I think a lot of Free Guy has been set up in that way, where it's designed to trigger memories of these other movies that they maybe hope people have seen. That's what I can kind of come up with there. There's a scene where Millie and what's the guy's name, Keys, are having they're showing that they were having years ago this interview in Seattle about their game. And when they ask, what's the most important thing to you? And he says, code. So people tend to take that line to think it means code being the gaming code, or the ones and the zeros, or the underlying whatever is happening in the makeup of reality. But code has a completely different meaning. It's a way of living, right? It's a what is the code you live your life by? What are the rules you live your life by? The code. So the code could be something that she/are dedicated to, or it could mean the code being some kind of underlying principle that they snuck into the game, into the characters, into whatever it's kind of in us. Like what's our code? And I don't mean that again by how are we programmed? How are we robotic? I mean that by what is the very underlying principles we're going to live our life by, because it really is important. What your code is, if you have a code like Steve McQueen did in 1960s movies, or your code is like Jess Spicoli from Fast Times in Ridgemont High, your life is completely different. And it's only different because of the underlying code that you're choosing to say, these are the things I stand for, these are the things I don't stand for, these are the ways I'm going to be, and this is what I'll accept, what I'll not accept. So I think that's a little sneak in there. Now, I will give reference to this woman again, this woman on the True Love channel, who she broke down a lot of the movie and trying to say what they were showing was the sort of the creation myth and the presentation of the Babylonian Sumerian gods, that the Antoine guy is like Enlil, and the other two are Enki and like Ishtar, and that's the reason the company's named Tsunami, which is like the flood. Then you bring in the flood myth, and you bring in Noah's Ark, and you bring in Utanipshin, right, in the Babylonian and Sumerian myths. When you bring in all of that, I think that's very interesting. Of course, you could switch it over to, and you could probably see it as, if you wanted to, through the eyes of like Egyptian. You could see it as Egyptian, right? You could also see the interplay of Guy being Horus, on sort of the hero's journey, being Hercules in the Greek myth, and you can also dig through the story of that entire process. You could see the Millie character potentially as Isis. You could see a lot of this stuff also played out in Egyptian mythology, but I don't want to get too far in that. And again, I mean, I could go through this for tons, but I don't. I want to just give you pieces because I want to keep the video reasonably short. You could also think of Millie in this game. What's her name? Molotov in the screen character. That Millie is like Sylvia in the Truman Show. It's because Millie eventually shows Guy the truth. She breaks down and tells him exactly what's going on, just as Sylvia does in the Truman Show on the beach. So you can see that similar. We can pass that, we can scap that, we can... One of the interesting points at the end of the movie is when Guy gets the NPC characters to go on strike, to no longer populate their roles, right? They're no longer living their normal loops. They're all in the coffee shop drinking cappuccinos. And it throws the world of the elites out the window, because here they are with their guns and their destructive things, and they're looking for somebody to kill, destroy, pillage, and there's nobody there. They've all gone on strike. And it's a really interesting metaphor for us. And it's something I'd said, wow, 20, even 30 years ago maybe, before I'd even begun this journey. I was thinking, the world only can function because the average Joe, the bus driver, the steel worker, the garbage collector, the people who, if the world can't function, the society can't function without them. We can think of them as lower menial paid jobs, and they're not as highly important as the university professor or the bank CEO or whatever, but if the people aren't at the steel mill or the people aren't driving the buses, the world shuts down. And I thought, if you really want to change the economic system, everyone just stops going to work. Like, you just stop. You just literally, the whole world stopped going to their job and said, we're not doing this anymore again. Everything would collapse, like in 24 hours. It would have to. I mean, it would potentially turn into chaos and, insanity short term, but everything would have had to, the system couldn't continue. The system continues because of everyone just doing what their role indicates of them. That's something that was very interesting in the philosophical video that I talked to you about, where, I can't remember who it was, Heidegger, I can't remember who the philosopher was. But was somebody who was talking about the human society runs on play. In a sense, play acting. The bus driver knows he's not a bus driver, but he acts as if he is a bus driver and is acting and becomes convinced that that is who or what he is, that is his identity, that's the way he must interact with the world. When, of course, on some level, he knows that's not true. He knows he's not a bus driver. He's playing a role. He's just playing. And as a sense, the depth of believing the role is the depth of, you might say, the asleepness in the dream. And as soon as you stop saying, I'm not the role, and I'm not going to be the role, and I have no interest in being any role, actually, society will stop. The way society is structured stops, right? There would be, if you're living in some sort of tribe or community, there would be requirements, things that have to be done. Somebody has to go to the river and collect water in pails and bring it back, so you have water to drink. But the person would never probably think that their whole identity revolves around them being the water getting person. That's just what they're doing short term for the village, and there's other things they do, and if somebody else needed to get the water another day and they needed to do something else, it would be fine. They wouldn't create a giant fight because they're not the water carrying person anymore. See what I mean? So that's in there. Okay. Near the end of this movie, we have this fight where this incredible Hulk-like character appears and tries to kill Guy. Now, this when Guy's kind of getting ready to try to leave, to get on the bridge to get out of here, that is the Truman battle with the storm, right? When Christoph sends the storm in to try to stop Truman from making it, that's the scene with Dude. Dude is trying to stop Truman from Guy from continuing his story. And we know it's the same because just like in the Truman Show, when that was being broadcasted, everybody's staring at their TVs. Well, we're seeing the same thing. We've got all these people staring at their computer screens, watching this outcome with the fight between Dude and Guy, and all cheering for the Guy character. So again, it's the same thing that's going on. One thing I caught right at the end of the movie that, there's lots of Matrix stuff. I mean, you'll see that yourself. Right at the end where Guy and the buddy character connect again on the street, when the camera pans back to where Guy is standing, you see the Dude character make the Donnie Darko wave in the exact same way that the Donnie Darko movie ends, with the wave. And the wave, as I talked about in that video, is so important. The Donnie Darko wave is offering a ton of information. Probably a video could just be done on the wave at the end of the movie from Donnie Darko. What does that mean? And there's no reason whatsoever why such a gesture should be in a movie like Free Guy. There's no reason for it. Yet there it is. And again, I think it's attempting to indicate that if you are really alert, if you're really awake to this, you'll be catching all of these other pieces that are in the movies. Okay, let's end the Free Guy talk with the ending of the movie, which ends in a very happily ever after way. The Millie and Keys meet on the street and they have their kiss, so that means they'll never have a problem again. This Hollywood kind of constant mental programming that once you have this moment in your life, then you'll never have another problem and everything will be perfect. Well, I'd love to meet one person who can actually say that that's how their life panned out after such a moment. That would be nobody. So first we have it's ending on this standard goofy lie, but the movie at least continues. But it shows the new free city where, there's no banks and there's no commerce and everybody can do what they want and it's all free and it's clean air and there's no rules and there's no government. And it's presented, and particularly the New Agers will say, yes, this is the world we're going to be building. This is what's going to happen for all of us now. But remember, this is the world that the virtual reality plugin is attempting to convince us that's what we should have. That this world is evil and scary and you can't leave your house and you can't go outside and you're not allowed to do anything. But when you put on the special goggles or you let us jack you in to this other world, it will be like the Free Guy experience. It'll be wonderful and happy and you can do what you want and there'll be no restrictions and no one will bother you. Isn't it great? So again, it's like setting up, the end part of this is setting up the trap. The trap that will probably, a lot of people will go into this virtual reality world willingly, quite willingly. They will go into it because they will see it as some sort of utopia, and that they would rather take a fake utopia, a fake virtual utopia, than dealing with the garbage of this reality and seeing what can be altered, changed, fixed, removed from whatever. Reverse of Pleasantville, right? Pleasantville, the character David winds up with the possibility of utopia. He's now would be like a king in Pleasantville. He's got the cheerleader, him and his mom, he's got the mom he kind of always wanted. Everything is perfect for him. Yet he leaves and he goes back to his regular world and his real mom and his regular life. Leaves that behind because it's virtual, it's fake, it's a dream. It's not at least the reality he knows to be true. Again, you'd have to then inspect that reality and see, is that true as well? But at least he's choosing of the two realities, he's choosing the one that he knows is the most true, even though it's way less fun, much more painful, much more difficult. There's a look at Free Guy. I should have some water with me, but I have trouble stopping these videos and starting again, so I'm going to have to just talk to you with a dry mouth. Next was the movie Midnight in Paris, the Woody Allen movie, which again was suggested to me, and I watched it and found it interesting from, again, the writing perspective and the writing possibilities of where I might go with my next project, of how I want to share information with you. There were some things I liked about Midnight in Paris. There's lots of things I didn't like about it, actually. And I'm going to share what I didn't like about it because it could have become, was a decent movie. It was okay. The movie could have been much better. It feels a bit like the way Inception was. Inception could have been like one of the greatest movies ever if they had just shifted a couple of things in the way they told the story. But Midnight in Paris, the first issue I've got was Owen Wilson as in the main character role. That was just not the right character. I don't know who the actor would have been. I'd have to really think about who I thought would have been the right one to be in that role. But it just wasn't him. And that took some of the story away because it didn't fit him, right? I didn't like that the movie was a constant presentation of the life of the elites. So, I mean, the character in the movie, the main characters in the Paris part of the movie, they're all rich screenwriters. The parents are, super rich, whatever. I mean, so they're all like, so first of all, we're seeing just the life of the elites. And then when he's going into the past, when he's going to the 1920s, we're seeing this is the world of the elite, right? This is the world of the novelists and the artists of the day have sort of crashed in with the elite, you might say, and are having these lavish experiences. And same thing when they go back to the Belle Epoque. Well, we're seeing the same thing. We're not seeing the lives of the normal people. We're not seeing the lives of the average person, or the people working the fields, or the people working in the streets, the people like working in the factories. We're not seeing we're seeing again a false experience, as if just like in Free Guy, as if what the players, the ones with the sunglasses, what their life is like, that's the only life we should be focused on. Yet the life of the regular people, the non-player characters who are being pushed around and manipulated and abused, these characters' lives are not significant. And so that's one thing that would bother me about the movie, is that that's fine if you need to show some of that for, of course, the story that you're trying to tell, but it would have been much more valuable to have had him spend time as well. If he's comparing the two worlds, he's got to compare also the normal, average, difficult, poverty and stricken world of today with the poverty and stricken world of those times, and how are they similar? How are they different? How is the struggle of the average person? If he's going to be a novelist, a writer is supposed to be writing about the challenge of being human, right? The human condition, the challenge of being stuck in a very unfair world with unfair rules, with treated by the world like a piece of crap. And how do you respond to that? What is your way of dealing with? That's the essence of the great literature of our past in many cases. So that's an issue. I didn't like the message at the end of the movie. That was the idea that the reason people are so focused on another time in the past, living in some other time, is because they can't handle the present. They don't like the present. The present is seen to be too difficult for them, and if they could just go some other time, everything would be great, it'd be wonderful. And the movie was supposed to say, but he went to the time that he thought was the most wonderful, and then the girl there says, no, I don't want that. I want to be in La Belle Epoque. And as opposed to, I think there's an underlying memory in our genetic structure that tells us there was a time in the past of this reality where life was much, much different, where life was not the piece of crap that we've known for our lives, was not this kind of control and difficulty and sickness and imbalance and everything else. That there was a time, and was it 50 years ago? Was it 200 years ago? Was it 5,000 years ago? We don't know. But something in us tells us there was another time, which part of all of my work that I've done to work on ancient Egypt and the World's Fairs and ancient Mexico or the Renaissance or anything else is about, partially, it's about trying to uncover how different was our past, and could any of these time periods been a place of real knowledge and a place of real harmonious living, real clear mental states that we're not dealing with now, that we have been sort of taken away from us. And that's part of what all my research has been about. And this movie is attempting to try to block that idea, as if you should only be focused on your present. Don't think about the past. The past is never better than the present. The present is always, this is the best you're ever going to get. And which is, of course, totally infallible thinking. You'd want to know if there was a time 500 years ago when the world could have been living in a very harmonious, non-warlike, very healthy, very clear, very connected way, and be like, hey, so we did that 500 years ago. Let's figure out how we can do that now and get rid of all this garbage. That would just make sense. So that message concerned me a bit in the movie. Another message, or another thing that really concerned me in the movie too, was the nostalgia shop girl. That of course she had to be, 20 years old and very beautiful, and this is as if this is what his whole focus is meant to be in life. And it would have made so much more of an impact if the woman, and I guess you could make the Woody Allen jokes now, of course, if you want, for the casting choices, but if the woman, let's say, had been like in her 40s and someone that was, very normal looking, was something I liked about the movie I saw recently, Last Train to Lisbon, which the character that the Jeremy Irons character, starts to become interested in was just very normal, very kind of, cute in her own way, but nothing, not like some sort of model special, actress. And this would have been perfect if somebody in that similar role working in that shop, but whose personality was an extreme match to his, that, she likes the Cole Porter songs and she knows them, and she has the records at home, and she, he already finds out about her and liking Paris in the Rain then, and so many other little pieces that are like the mirror of his personality, that the covering she's got is less important than the package of totality that would be representing to him, which would make sense then as to, well, maybe I'll choose the present, and he's not running away from the past then because he's hiding from it. He's seeing what's possible in his present, and what's possible is something very, let's say, connective and good for his future experience. So I thought that would have been a really, really interesting way of doing this. Some things that I thought were good about the movie. One was really nice to see Paris, see a city like living the way cities used to be, where people walked around with no face diapers and could all just sit on cafes, and there were no police officers trying to arrest you because you're standing on a street corner and to see what papers you might have, where it was literally just, you could just be outside and just walk around and just experience life. It was wonderful to see. Of course, Paris is a beautiful city to be in. And so that was nice just to see that. Another thing I really liked was the presentation of course, these artists and these authors who were then especially very, hard drinking, highly partying, highly adventurous people. And partially that's, in a sense, it's required, right? I mean, you need, if you're going to bring out artistic things, particularly if you're a musician generally, you need to have a lot of tragedy, for example. You need to have a lot of pain in your past, so that pain will come through in the music that you play, or the things that you paint. The pain is represented and magnified in a way that tries to be in some way uplifting, right? Even though it might be sad or depressing presentation, the sad or depressing presentation is meant to be an honest touching of the human-to-human connection there. The other way, of course, particularly if you're a novelist, you need to have adventure. You need to have stuff going on. You can't write about life in a vacuum. If you don't have any experiences, you've got nothing to write about. So it's important for these characters to be constantly, you might say, in action. Going here, doing this, going to this party, off to Africa, off to do this, off to have this adventure, off to have this experience, because otherwise, what are you going to write about? Right? It's very hard to write about things you don't know. The more things you've personally experienced, and the more things you can personally have tried, touched onto, there's more possibilities you can then write from, because it's at least from what I've known about the whole writing process, the more you try to write about something you haven't experienced, the harder it is. And the only way you can do it is then to link it to something that's like similar. Okay, I remember this is kind of like that, so I'm going to write about this experience as if it was this one here, and you do it that way. So I think that was very, very, very well done. And it made me think, like, today with the world being squeezed and squashed and like the world being in a vice and almost like, we're living in our own little prison worlds now. It's how it's being pushed on us, right? I mean, there's lots of good things happening right now. I'm watching a recent thing on BitChute, and there is some, there is good stuff still. I mean, I'm still not overly optimistic going forward. But there are a lot of cracks that are happening, and there are a lot of little doors that are opening, but the mental state of the average person, even the ones who have said no to all this, I'm not doing all this, I'm not being a part of this, it's still, the stress has been massive. The stress, just on that level, it's never mind now you start losing your jobs, you're dealing with what your kids and your family and how this is going to happen with people. But I mean, people are mentally on the verge of cracking, and everyone will be acting a little weird sometimes. I notice it myself. I sometimes just wrong time of the day, wrong whatever, and I'm just not fully, I'm not fully present. I'm just not totally clear sometimes. It's just kind of like, especially if I've been looking at what's going on, or I've watched some difficult information, and it's kind of like it still affects me, even though it's not affecting me right here in this second. It's still affecting me energetically. And it takes me like a half hour, an hour to sort of clean that out. If you're in the world much, much more and having to deal with things on a moment by moment basis, I mean, it's tough for people energetically. So kind of keep that in mind, that if someone acts strange every once in a while, that's normally a good friend, or normally, it's just people are under a lot of stress. And it makes me wonder, because I just talked about, you need all these experiences to be really creative often. You need to have a very adventurous life to often bring that into your creativity. And now with this adventurous life being sucked away from people, we might be actually moving into a very uncreative time. Now, that might be needed, because we don't need people to be creative. We need people to gate a code. They need to get stronger and stronger with their code and what they're going to demand or not demand of this reality and the things that are in it, and if necessary, die to uphold their code. And maybe we actually don't need creativity. We need something else right now. But that was something that I did like about the movie, was this presentation of the sort of life these people live. Anything else I really liked about the movie? No, not really. I think that was about it. It was more though when I saw it again, it was one of these movies that I watched that I said, this could have been really, really good. There's other depths you could have taken, to the more philosophical depths you could have taken, more angles you could have taken with the whole going back into the past and dealing with stuff, and it would have been great. Because also another thing I didn't like is he kept saying, whatever, this person was exactly the way I read them to be, and this person was exactly like the way I heard that they were. And so how would you then know that the experience you were just having in the 1920s wasn't just a mental fantasy of everything you've read or known, because it's just mirroring what's there. And of course, as we've come to see from looking into the fairs and anything else, if you actually went back to the past, no matter how much I thought things are a certain way, we'd see a lot of things that would just surprise the hell out of us. It'd be like, what? You'd have this, what? This is like this? What, the cars do this? I mean, there'd be so many things that we'd come back and go, but you know what? In 1912, I didn't know that, wow, people had this, or people acted like this, or I mean, it was shocking. And so because he's not coming back with these shocking experiences that, like, wow, I didn't expect Paris in the 1920s would be like this. I didn't expect people behaved in this manner. No, I've never read that in a book ever before. This would lend more credibility to this interest of looking into history, trying to uncover what's there, and at the same point in time, getting us to question more about everything, and then you would, if you really had this time travel experience, you would trust it more. You would trust that it was real, right? That's one of the reasons I trusted what happened to me later on in the canyon, because when I looked and started reading your standard awakening literature, my experience was nothing like that. There's the template of, if this happens to you, it's supposed to look like this. This is the story. Mine was like nothing like that at all. And so at first I questioned it because I thought, well, all of these people must be right. They must, they're the ones writing the books. It took me quite a while until I bumped into a few simplistic things in little other places that did actually match sort of what I went through. And that's when I kind of saying, okay, I think it's a genuine experience then. I think what I went through was genuine, and it's nothing like what is actually a false presentation. It's just like the false history. I mean, if we could go back and see, the day Kennedy was shot in 1963, I mean, even just to, again, for the average person to see when Kennedy's limousine doesn't turn up the street it's supposed to, but actually went onto the wrong street and the whole thing had to back up and everyone waited for a while and then the car turned around and then, went up the street it's supposed to go up. Just to be the average person who thinks they know the story, to go and just see that part of it, to catch, how come no one ever told me about the car thing? This is like, well, why didn't you shoot him there? The car wasn't even moving. It was, it's like, so I think that's something else of the Midnight in Paris movie that I was concerned about. But anyway, another movie I'd highly recommend, by the way, for people to watch. It's not like some sort of awakening type movie. It was called Silver Linings Playbook. When you talk about, I'm saying the Midnight in Paris is all about the elites. Here's a movie that's all about average people with average situations, dealing with, severe mental challenges in life, and the writing of the movie is unbelievably outstanding. The people who it's from a novel. I haven't read the novel yet, but I want to read the novel. But and I see how realistic the novel writing is, but certainly as it was placed together into the movie, the language and the way the characters interact with each other is as real and as raw as you can get. I mean, you're seeing real life. I mean, that in a sense was fantastic. And then you add the acting roles of the characters in the movie. The acting was stunningly fantastic. And it was, when I was done that, because it was one of these things that was my wife who found it, actually. She was looking through things and said, well, let's try this movie. And it was one of those unbelievably pleasant surprises of like, and again, it was partially because the movie was it was an entertaining movie, but it was the realism of what you were seeing. It's like, I'm seeing real life. I'm not seeing fantasy. I'm not seeing fakeness. I'm not seeing standard Hollywood garbage. I'm seeing something real. I'm seeing the way life is for people. And so, anyway, that was a movie highly recommended. Silver Linings Playbook, if you bump into it. Hard title to remember. Okay, last thing to end with is I've got an interview coming up Thursday I'm doing with Bart Marshall, which I'm really looking forward to. I linked to one of his lectures a long time ago. Outstanding individual, great writer, and we're going to talk about Carlos Castaneda and various Carlos Castaneda terms and what we think they mean, how, because he, like I, put Castaneda's books into practice a long time ago, and we're going to share. I've been waiting to share some more Castaneda stuff with you, and I wanted to do it with him. So we're going to be doing that and seeing where the conversation goes. That'll maybe be up Thursday, or Friday, Saturday for all of you guys. But I want to do a one in about a week or so, what I'm going to call 10 questions. And what I want to take is questions from you, questions you would like to see me answer. And it doesn't matter. It can be subject matter to the things I normally talk about, be they awakening stuff, be they history, be they whatever. Great. Put those in the comments here below. Or a lot of people don't have a YouTube account. Some people may not believe that, but lots don't. You're welcome to email me. Just put in the subject heading, like 10 questions or my question or something, so I know I can move all those to a folder and can look through them individually. Or it can be, maybe there's a personal question. Maybe there's something you've been curious about my life or my past, or something I had mentioned a long time ago and you want to know more about. Fine, ask that. Maybe maybe it was something about a movie that I talked about, or you have a question about that, or it's totally free. I mean, I'm going to pick 10 that sort of are on a similar path. Like if 5 or 6 or 10 people all kind of ask the same question, well, I will piece those together and try to answer one of them that hopefully answers many of them. So I'll do that in about a week's time. So I have about 7 days to kind of throw those off to me, and then I'm going to choose 10, and I will answer them for you. And that's going to come up in a video in about a week. So there you go. Free Guy, Midnight in Paris. Nothing from my January 13th journey, other than the only message I got from the journey was the study of Rennes-le-Château, or this whole mystery of southern France, isn't going to tell you all that much about southern France. It's going to tell you a lot more about you. And I thought that was a really interesting message, a really interesting reason to keep studying this, and an interesting thing for all of us to keep going forward. See you with Bart's interview in a few days, and whatever your question you would like me to answer, be it something you have a challenge with, have a question about, something that I mentioned and you'd like to have more detail on, leave it below or send me an email, and I will get to those in about a week. Thanks again for the interactions, the comments, the donations, the book sales, the suggestions of other videos and things. Some I watch, some I don't, some I comment on, some I don't, but I still appreciate, I appreciate you taking the time to interact with me, and yeah. So we'll see you in a few days. Cheers.